Konnichiwa. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is Tuesday, the 30th of March, 2021, and this is for our webinar entitled Understanding Japan's Rapidly Evolving Recruitment Trends. And just looking at this picture here, it reminds me to say that I hope everyone's had a chance to enjoy the nice spring weather that Tokyo has been enjoying recently, and that you've all had a chance to get out there and enjoy the cherry blossoms whilst they're still in bloom. All right, back to the webinar. In this webinar, we will share with you the key findings from our 2021 Hays Asia Salary Guide report, which includes a market overview of recruitment trends in Asia, which obviously includes Japan, industry-specific insights, and then our recommendations for both employers and employees in 2021 based on the findings in our report. We will also have a Q&A session at the end, so please feel free to submit your questions through the questions pane on your right anytime during this webinar, and I will attempt to answer as many as I can at the end. If we don't get to your question, rest assured that one of our recruitment experts will come back to you over the next few days. This is somewhat a part 2 to our salary guide edition. There was a Japanese language version that we delivered last Wednesday. If you feel like you would like to listen to that Japanese version recording, please let us know in the chat function as well, and our marketing team will come back to you with a link to the Japanese language version. Okay, let's get started. I'd just like to introduce myself here. My name is Grant Torrens, and I am the Managing Director for Hays in Japan. I've been with Hays now for 15 years. I began my recruitment career with Hays in London back in 2006. I recruited for the accountancy and finance functions across the banking and financial services sector in London. In 2010, I decided that I wanted to get more exposure to the Asia region, and I moved internally through Hays' internal mobility scheme to join our Singapore business. So I've been in Singapore for 10 years following that move, and ended up running our Singapore business as the regional director up until earlier this year. In February 2021, I took up the opportunity to relocate and move to Tokyo to manage our Japanese business, which covers 3 locations: Tokyo, Osaka, and Yokohama. All right, here's a bit of an agenda for what we are going to talk about today. I'll spend the first part of the webinar discussing the Asia findings from our 2021 reports. What we're then going to do is zone in a little bit deeper and go into the Japan-only findings. I'll then move on to discussing key industry insights that has come from the data in our report. In the interest of time, I'm going to focus on just 3 industries today, and I'll share with you what they are later. But if you download our report, you'll of course have access to many, many more industries. I'll then move on to discussing our recommendations for employers as well as employees, and we have 5 recommendations for both. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll move on to a Q&A session. So please do get busy sending through all your questions on the chat function to the right of your screen. So of course, I'd like to just share with you a little bit more about who Hays are, and a quick introduction as to what we do. Hays is one of the leading specialist recruitment companies globally, and we are currently the market leader in both the UK as well as the Asia Pacific region. Worldwide, we employ over 10,000 staff till date, and we operate from 265 offices in 33 markets across 20 different specialist business units. In Asia, we continue to strengthen our position in 5 markets, which include China, Hong Kong SAR, Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore. As I mentioned earlier, in Japan, we have a presence in 3 of our key locations, those 3 being Tokyo, Osaka, and Yokohama. As you can see on the screen here, the bottom right, we are of course very proud to be the official recruitment partner of the City Football Group, as well as the Japan-based Yokohama F. Marinos. We also remain the most followed recruiting and staffing agency on LinkedIn. We currently have 4.5 million followers, and that grows every single day. So if you're not already, I do urge you to jump on LinkedIn later, follow us to get updated industry news, CV tips, interview advice, and much more. A little bit about this report. As mentioned, the insights we will share today are based on our annual Hays Asia Salary Guide for 2021. This is a definitive snapshot of salaries for positions across industries in Asia. The salary and hiring insights, including a thorough market overview of business outlooks, salary policies, and recruitment trends, are based on a record number of survey responses this year. Nearly 10,000 working professionals located in those 5 Hays operating markets I mentioned before across Asia took part in our survey this year. So that includes anyone on the webinar today. A big thank you to us for taking part. This year marks the 14th edition of our report. So I'd like to start off by talking to you about the Asia findings. The first trend we're going to look at is candidate motivations, and the key theme from this is that candidate motivations have remained unchanged. The first trend is that the candidate motivations for looking for a new job or staying in their current one have been unchanged over time. Our results show that while uncertain economic climates may have shook organizations, candidates seem as determined as ever in their search for greener working pastures. The same amount of candidates are actively looking for a job across Asia as they were last year, with 36% of respondents indicating that that was the case. Malaysia, or people based in Malaysia, were the most open to looking for new roles, with 43% indicating this. If we look at Japan, Japan-based candidates were the second most open to looking for new roles, with 41% indicating that that was the case, and that was higher than last year. So last year in Japan, candidates based there, only 36% responded that this was the case. Interestingly, for the first time in 5 years, the primary drivers for candidates looking out for new roles has slightly changed this year. But for the 5th year in a row, salary or benefit packages still remains the #1 reason, with 58% of respondents indicating that this was the #1 reason why they would look for a new role. However, this year, the second most selected response has changed, and the third most selected response has changed. So this year, lack of career progression has moved up into second spot, with 42% of respondents indicating this response. They just pipped the third most selected response, which was seeking new challenges at 41%. This makes it very clear that companies must continue to deliver on pay packages and provide their employees with challenges and opportunities for growth if they are to attract the best talent in the market. In addition to these, the top reason why candidates stay with their current employers is also better salary package, with almost half of respondents indicating that that was the reason why they would stay with their current employer. That is also 9% higher than the response rate last year for that reason. Work-life balance came in second at 48%, followed by career progression at 41%. So these drivers are a continued trend from last year, making it obvious that employers need to focus on specific areas if they are to retain and attract the best talent in the market. Let's look at our second trend from the report, which is around skill gaps and the effects that these gaps have had during the pandemic. So organizations are also increasingly aware of the impact that skill shortages will have on the coming year. The majority are aware that skill shortages will hamper their business operations to some extent in 2021, particularly with regards to their impact on revenue and profit. And in fact, 50% of respondents indicated this. Interestingly, 33% of respondents this year indicated that they felt that innovation and creativity was the area that was most likely to be positively impacted by the pandemic, as organizations become forced to find new solutions to new challenges whilst dealing with what is probably going to be an increasingly limited resource budget. The majority of organizations also agree that a lack of training and professional development is the leading cause for such shortages in their industry. 36.5% of respondents indicated this, but you'll notice from this slide that last year, 46% of respondents indicated this. So that change in percentage would indicate that organizations have focused on improving the training and professional development elements over the past 12 months, but they still feel like it is the leading cause of skills gaps. And our third trend here is employers are increasingly conservative with our wage increments this year. And this threw up some very interesting data compared to previous years, clearly in response to the coronavirus pandemic. So our guide showed that employers are noticeably becoming increasingly conservative when it comes to increments over time. When asked if employee salaries had increased in the last year, most organizations in Asia reported that salaries actually stayed the same. So 35% of respondents gave us that response. And they also expected to keep this range over the course of the coming year. This was actually a trend that the Hays Asia Salary Guide in 2020 predicted. When we asked if employee salaries had increased in the last year, most organizations who responded said that salaries had stayed the same and they expect to keep this range. One concern is that an increasing number of companies expect to decrease their salaries over the course of 2021. And this was the first time that our salary guide had reflected such a response. 6% of respondents indicated that they expect a decrease in salaries over this year, with 4% also indicated that they expected to do the same again over the next 12 months. When we look at that per country, Malaysia and Hong Kong employers indicated that they decreased salaries over the past year more than any other Asia respondents, with 7% in each country saying this. If we look at Japan, Japan was amongst the lowest. Only 3% of employees had indicated that they decreased salaries in the past 12 months. If you look at the slide here on the right, the table there looks at the countries with the highest percentage of respondents for the salary bracket increase options that we asked them with regards to what they expect to happen in the coming 12 months. So that brings to conclusion the Asia findings. I'd now like to take a deeper look at Japan's specific findings from the report. So today we're going to look at three main trends in the Japan findings. That is wage increments, skill shortages, and candidate motivations. Overall for Japan, we noticed that wage increments seem to be on the decrease, while the ongoing skills gap may see an increase in 2021, which throws up an interesting problem. So let's take a look at wage increments first. Wage increments may be reaching a stagnation in Japan, with most organizations, so 37%, expecting to maintain salary levels this year. This was actually the highest percentage in Asia to indicate this response alongside Hong Kong. This was closely followed up by a third of organizations, just over a third, 35%, who said that they expected to give raises of up to 3%. And as I mentioned before, 3% indicating that they would decrease salaries in the coming year. However, on the positive side, working professionals in Japan appear to be realistic in their expectations, and they match their employer predictions, with the majority, so 44% of employees, also equally expecting no change in their salary this year. And interestingly, only a quarter said that they expected up to 3% increase. More interestingly, actually, 6% of employees in Japan did respond to say that they actually would expect some kind of a decrease in their salary this year. And that made them the joint highest in Asia to select this bracket alongside Malaysia. Only 28% of employees across Japan said that they expect a raise, and this happens to be the lowest percentage to select this response or these responses in Asia. Let's look at our second trend for Japan, which is skill shortages. Only 38% of organizations in Japan were confident that they have the talent to achieve their current business goals. It is worth noting, though, that this was an increase of 7% from what people responded last year for the same question. And almost half, 47%, suggested that they did not have the current skill sets to achieve their business objectives. And it's also worth noting that this is a 6% decrease from the same responses last year. But this still indicates a skills gap, with 21% of Japan employees responding that they spent 0 hours upskilling themselves outside of their job. You can compare this to other countries in Asia, most notably China, where 32% of employees there said that they spend at least 3 to 5 hours a week upskilling themselves. And in fact, only 10% of respondents in China said that they spent 0 hours upskilling themselves. This was the lowest number in Asia by far, about 50% lower than the rest of Asia. Let's take a look at some skills, and let's look at them in terms of hard skills versus soft skills. So what skills will be in demand in 2021? Employers in Japan said that they still value hard skills over soft, with 55% saying that hard skills were the most sought after by their organization, compared to 44% who said that soft skills were favored more. The most sought after hard skills in 2021 will be technical skills, with 58% of respondents indicating that, followed by analytical skills, with 53% indicating this, and language skills, with 46% indicating this. If we take a look at the right of the screen and we focus on the soft skills, the top soft skills that employers in Japan are looking for in 2021 are communication skills, with 79% of respondents indicating this. This is closely followed by problem solving, with 71% indicating this. And finally, in third space, team working, with 58% indicating that. Let's look at non-permanent roles, or temporary and contracting recruitment in Japan for 2021. Interestingly, employers in Japan were most likely to hire temporary staff for their administrative skills. 51% suggested that this was the skill or the function where they would hire temporary or contracting personnel. This was followed by technical skills at 32%, and digital transformation skills also at 22%. Sorry, technical skills at 32% and digital transformation skills at 22%. Overall, Japan employees indicated a huge 23% increase in temporary hiring in 2021, mostly to satisfy peaks in hiring demands. I'd now like to take a look at candidate attraction in Japan. Results of our survey revealed that while only 36% of employees in Japan were actively looking for a new job, 45% actually did still say that they were open to new opportunities. So in other words, 81% of respondents in Japan are open to exploring new opportunities. When asked why they were looking for a new employer, most respondents said that they were simply seeking a new challenge. 45% responded with that. This was followed by 43% who indicated that they were actually looking for a better salary or benefits package. And finally, lacking career progression at 38%. So this is in stark contrast to the Asia findings that indicated that a better salary or benefits package was the #1 reason. In Japan, it was seeking a new challenge. This is a hot topic, and we'll talk a little bit about employee retention in Japan. Salary has become less important as a retention tool for employees in Japan who favored work-life balance in their responses this year. So 53% of Japan-based respondents indicated that they would stay in their organization for better work-life balance as opposed to salary package. Salary package still made it into the top 3, coming in there at 47% in second place. Work location was at third place, with 42% of our respondents indicating that that would be the main reason why they would stay with their organization. So that ends the Japan salary guide update. Let's now take a look at some key industry insights. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to just choose 3 major industries to talk about. In Japan, we're going to focus on manufacturing and engineering, information technology, and the third one will be life sciences. But you can find an exhaustive list of insights across all other major industries in our guide. Okay, so let's look at the manufacturing and engineering industry first. So following 2020's rise in e-commerce and AI digitalization, companies wishing to control their own data flows are turning away from data center vendors and instead looking to develop data centers of their own. This is especially true of retail and cosmetic businesses, and it is driving up an unprecedented demand for data center candidates, as manufacturing companies shift their focus in this direction throughout 2021. Thanks to a business strategy that plans 2 years in advance, Japan's automotive industry was able to ride out the challenges of the pandemic, with the exception of the 6-month freeze on positions in digitalization and transformation. Furthermore, 2021 will be bullish as there is much talk about large-scale recruitment, most likely in renewable energies, AI, and digitalization. Another position expected to be prominent is field services engineers, required to design, install, and/or repair equipment related to the technology world. Candidates in this area can look forward to being in great demand over the coming 12 months. The second industry that we're going to focus on now is information technology. Momentous changes in how Japan works have sparked demand throughout the IT sector, as businesses have had to quickly and efficiently transition to what we call the new normal. And many of these changes will continue into 2021. Out of practical necessity, desktop support roles have escalated as systems are transitioned and employees working from home require IT assistance almost on a daily basis. However, despite the demand for these services, desktop support operators can only expect moderate salary increases or for salaries to remain stable in the coming year. This transition has seen numerous risk-related problems come to the fore. The most obvious is external hacking, though the potential for internal data leaks, whether accidental or malicious, is of serious concern, as incidences can not only damage a business's reputation with customers, but it can also dissuade potential employees from wanting to join that organization. As a result, firms are looking for candidates in information security and system risk management to tighten those systems, and these mid to high level positions in what is a talent short area could command salary increases on a case-by-case basis, which is far beyond the average that we will see across industries in Japan. Our final look is at life sciences, obviously a booming industry over the course of the pandemic. The implementation of big data and analytics is set to become more commonplace throughout this industry, especially in immunology, related clinical trial fields where real-world data can be used to support trials. This is fortunate as the clinical trial sector, especially when it relates to new drug development, will be of key concern in 2021. This will be enhanced by a transition towards digitalization, with companies providing platforms and services that can support trials whilst limiting participant health risks. In the diagnostics area, predictions are that companies will continue genetic study investments, incorporating both DNA and RNA sequencing that can either support new drug development with biomarker studies or substantiate diagnostic testing. Candidates operating in this area may see salary increases as there is a shortage of those who actually boast real-world experience, and employers must be flexible in order to attract this type of talent. So that's our 3 industries that we wanted to focus on during this webinar. Just to reiterate, when you download the report, you'll be able to gain access to analysis and insights into many other main industries in Japan. Okay, so as we do every year, Hayes has put together a list of recommendations for both employers as well as employees based on the results of our guide. So let's take a look at our recommendations for employers first. Our first recommendation is to separate working from home from working at home. With only 46% of employees saying that their work-life balance is good or very good, and that's down from 50% who responded with that in 2019, this could be because employees are spending an increasingly higher percentage of their home time actually working, always on call to answer emails or join online meetings. Companies should note that the demarcation line between work and home has blurred, and it is thus important to be responsive for this. Our second recommendation to employers is to reorganize bonus structures in order to retain key talent. Some employees not only saw salaries cut or positions demoted, but 36% indicated that they were not recompensated by way of reduced working hours or increased benefits. As the global economy starts to improve in the coming months and the recruitment market becomes more and more competitive, companies will need to ensure that they are able to retain their best talents, and inspiring loyalty in your employee base will be key. Our third recommendation there is to decide how to access the best digital talent. As employees work from home and revenue streams are increasingly sought throughout online channels, 46% of companies are restructuring organizations and departments due to changing business needs. More than 1.5 times that of in 2019, where 30% indicated this. And much of this can be linked to the digital revolution. Our fourth recommendation is to continue improved innovation through diversity. As the market moves slowly into a post-pandemic world with improving economies and new opportunities, now is not the time to relax this impetus and fall back into old ways. Companies must investigate how they can build on this innovation to reach even greater heights in 2021. And one strategy is to improve workforce diversity. And our fifth and final recommendation for employers is to reconsider the temporary staffing market. For risk-adverse or budget-conscious employers, the hiring of temporary staff, maybe often at higher salaries, may feel like a bit of an anathema. Yet these individuals will bring with them a wealth of expertise, often beyond the remuneration that they demand. Let's now move on and look at the 5 recommendations that we have for employees based on the findings in our report this year. Our first recommendation for employees is to take the time to upskill for the sake of both your career and your company. As 85% of companies feel that skill shortages will certainly impact their business in the coming year, employees must consider whether they are part of the solution or part of the problem. It is critical that both job seekers and employees alike are on top of the latest skill sets, and it is therefore imperative that they find time to develop this. Our second recommendation is to make sure you fill the right skills gap. If employees wish to be noticed, they should spend time, first of all, researching their industry, searching online, approaching a recruitment consultant, or attending online and offline networking events. It may also help to find a mentor who has the skills to help guide you in the right direction to help you achieve the career that you want. Our third recommendation for employees is to alter your objectives or know what your worth is. With revenues impacted by the pandemic, companies are less willing to augment salaries in the years to come. 37% said that they will remain salaries at a steady pace, and a further 4% indicated that they will actually decrease salaries. So now is a time for employees to consider what else is it that they desire. And a lack of career progression, work-life balance, and new opportunities were all indicated as push factors in our responses. Our penultimate recommendation for employees is to stand out by offering something more. With 58% of organizations currently restructuring to keep up with their business needs, candidates must ask themselves whether they are prepared to be part of that restructuring process. Now is the optimal time for candidates to uncover their options, perhaps taking advantage of the booming industries such as technology, healthcare, or e-commerce. And our fifth and final recommendation for employees is only you can progress your career. It is very important that employees are seen to be impressive in their roles, but not to the extent as to appear indispensable. As employers may decide that the disadvantages of their replacement outweigh their advantages elsewhere. But perhaps above all, those looking to advance should ensure that others are aware of this ambition. If you want your career to progress, you have to put yourself out there. Okay, thank you very much for your time so far. That concludes the analysis and insights into our report and the recommendations for employees and employers. I'd now just like to take a minute to give you some time to jump on the chat function on your screen there on the right and send through any questions that you'd wish to pose to me right now, and I can take some time to answer those questions. Rest assured, if I'm not able to get to your question today in the interest of time, I will ensure that one of our expert recruiters does reach out and responds to your question in due time over the next couple of days. So I'll just wait now for a few questions to come through. Okay, we're getting some questions come through here. So there's a question here from Abijoy Gosroy, who is touching on Japanese language capability. Abijoy, thanks for your question. You say, hello team, has the language requirements been relaxed in the Japanese job market for experienced employees, keeping in mind the acceptance of foreign nationals in Japan? And that is a good question. The best way to answer that is to say that it is still a bit dependent on the current situation. Certainly across the three markets that we operate in, Japan, Osaka, and Yokohama, Japan does seem a market where not having an understanding of the Japanese language wouldn't give you too much of a problem in finding a new opportunity. But certainly there is still a demand from our clients in Western Japan to have those language capabilities, those Japanese language capabilities. And there's no doubt that a preference in our clients in Tokyo would be to either find someone that does speak Japanese or even better has the bilingual capability. Kazuyuki Koga has asked a question, what was the number of respondents for the survey? And you might have missed the first slide that I showed, but there was nearly 10,000, about 9,600 respondents this year responded to this survey. Okay, just looking for some other questions here. Someone has asked here, how would they go about asking for a salary increase in the face of employees being a bit more reluctant to give that during the pandemic? I think the best way to answer that question is, like when you go into any negotiation, it is best that you plan ahead and think about what you're going to say. So I would think about what is the value that you have contributed to your organization in the past 12 months. I would then send your manager an email and ask them for some time where you and them can sit down and discuss this topic. I wouldn't make them feel like you've ambushed them into it by getting them into a room and then having this conversation. I would let them know in advance that you would like an hour off their time so you can talk about your salary or your salary review. During that meeting, I would calmly and clearly lay out why you feel like you do deserve a salary increase and what that increase should be. And I would always link it back to actual factual data. So in other words, the value that you brought to the business over the past 12 months. You should refrain from trying to compare yourself to other people or what you perceive other people have received, and instead link it to factual data about yourself. I would then give your manager an opportunity to go away and consider your request and consider their opinion, their position, sorry. They may also have to engage with other people in order to come to a decision. So you might leave that conversation by saying, I would like to have a follow-up meeting with you in 2 or 3 days' time. We have a question here, where can I download the report or the guide? So following this webinar, we're going to send you an email which will give you a link that will allow you to download this report. The report is available in 2 languages for our Japan-based audience, in English and of course also in Japanese. There's a good question here from Philippe. What do you exactly mean or imply by diversity? And that's an interesting question, and that in fact is a whole topic on itself. Philippe, just to let you know, we do have a white paper on diversity for Hays Asia, and I'm happy to send you a link to that report. Diversity often brings up images of people mainly talking about diversity with regards to gender. But of course, diversity is much more broader than just gender. And it's important that people think outside of just gender when they're looking to build a diverse workforce. And our diversity and inclusion report for Asia really helps to go into a lot of detail about what exactly diversity is, but also just as important, what does exclusivity mean when you talk about diversity? So I'll make sure after this, I get you a link to our diversity and inclusion report so you can take a bit more of a deeper look at that. There's another question here about how can I upskill? This is a good question, and obviously a big part of this webinar did talk about the skills gap and how most organizations did feel that a gap in skills was going to impact the amount of revenue and profit that their business can generate in 2021. So looking at ways of upskilling is certainly a good question to ask. I think the reason why people say that they spent 0 hours upskilling themselves generally tends to be the reason that you get for most things, which is time. You didn't have the time to do that. So I think the first thing that you can do to ensure that you do upskill yourself is to structure your day or structure your week, which gives you a couple of hours spare time to devote to upskilling yourself. So that would be the first thing that I would do. Once you have that time allocated, there are a number of ways that you can go and look for resources that would help you to add to your skill set. The first one, which is often quite overlooked, is your current organization may already have copious amounts of resources available to employees that will help them to advance their skill sets. So I would recommend that you go to your HR department or your people and culture department and ask them, do they have a kind of library where they keep this kind of resources? If they don't have this, these resources, you can then look external. There's tons of great business books out there. You can just simply Google the skill that you want to improve on, and you'll get a whole list of great business books that you can then go out and read that will help you understand this. You can also listen to podcasts. Obviously, in this day and age, there's tons of podcasts out there. There's tons of YouTube videos out there that will help you to develop that skill. You can attend conferences and seminars, either in person or during the coronavirus epidemic or pandemic. A lot of these conferences became digital, so you could obviously join those. And also try and find a mentor as well. Within your organization, there might be someone that you can approach for being a mentor. It could also be someone outside your organization as well. And if you find someone and you can make them your mentor, you can arrange a time to regularly catch up with them to help develop those skills. There's a question here as well. With the pandemic, is it a good time to look for another job? And again, that kind of depends on individual circumstances. What I can say is that certainly what we're seeing from a global economic position, which also includes Japan, is that there's no doubt that we are entering a bit of a recovery phase with regards to the global market, with regards to the Japanese market. And obviously, as you ride the wave of a recovery, organizations are going to be much more flexible or much more willing to start to add to their headcount. So you could argue that now that we are entering a bit more of a improved economic market, there's going to be a lot more opportunities out there for candidates. Therefore, it probably is a good time to start looking out. We've just got time for a couple of more, so I'm just looking for some other questions. There's a few questions here by 2 or 3 people that I'm looking at, which is talking about how they can go about augmenting their workforce through using temporary and contracting workers. We can make this information available to you, but if you simply drop me an email to my email address, which is grant.torrens, so grant.torrens @hayes.co.jp. And what I can do is I can put you in touch with our temporary and contracting recruitment team. In Japan, we have over 30 specialist recruiters who focus only on temporary recruitment, temporary and contract recruitment. So no matter what function you're looking to recruit for, or no matter what industry you are from, I'll certainly be able to put you in touch with someone that has the network and expertise to help you with that. Okay, we've probably got time for just one more, I think, one more question. So a lot of people have focused on part of our webinar that has talked about the skills gap naturally. I'm just seeing a few others here talking about how to close the skills gap, particularly when they can't access, or it's more difficult to access a wider talent pool from foreign markets. So I'll just share with you a little bit of information that I share with most of our clients on what they can do to help bridge that skills gap. And I think the first thing that you can do to help solve this is you need to do some research on your organization to understand exactly where the skills gap is. And this can be done in the guise of producing a skills gap analysis report. So quite simply, you look over your organization, talk to people in it, talk to managers, and understand what skills are required for your organization to achieve its goals. Once you have that list of skills, you then need to be able to understand what skills are currently available in your organization. This is pretty simple data to get, actually. Again, you can go and speak to direct hiring managers about the people in their team, and they will be able to map out for you what skills exist in that team. You can also look at the most recent performance appraisals as well, which should give you an idea about the types of skills that exist. So once you've got the list of skills that you require up against the list of skills that you have, you then know where those gaps exist. Now, in terms of being able to bridge those gaps, there's a bit of an action plan that you might be able to adhere to help with that. Probably the first one that I would suggest, and maybe the easiest one, is to try and provide training to upskill the current workforce that you have, to provide them with the skills that you feel like you're lacking in your organization. Failing that, you can then take a look at your employer branding. If you're going to go out there and look to hire externally to help bridge the skills gap, you're going to have to look at your employer branding so that you can cut through the noise in this market and make your organization or your brand appealing to attract these types of skills. Again, we're talking about one of the questions before around diversity. You can look at your candidate attraction plan and take a look at, is it casting a wide enough net? Is it looking at various talent pools, and is it tapping into diverse talent pools, which will ensure that you're covering off the market for those skills? Again, you can consider temp and contract hiring. As I said before, reach out to me if you'd like me to put you in touch with someone who can help you with that. But certainly contract and temporary hiring is a really quick solution to augment your workforce to help bridge that gap. The final point I would say, and this is often overlooked but very, very important when considering the skills gap, is taking a look at the retention in your current organization. There is little point spending time and resources in developing new skills or bringing new skills into your organization if skills are walking out the back door at the same time. So I would urge people to take a look at their retention strategy. What is your retention rate? What is the reasons that people are giving as to why they're leaving your organization, and put in some thorough strategies to work on solving that solution. If you can plug that hole at the same time bringing in those skills, then that's going to give you the best way of overcoming that skill set, or that skills gap problem, sorry. Okay, that's about all we have for questions. There are others there that we haven't had time to answer, but as I've said, I will certainly reach out to you or have one of our recruiters reach out to you to provide you with an answer to your question over the coming days. Please rest assured. Again, if you don't get that response, please reach out to me on my email, grant.torrens@hayes.co.jp, or you can also find me through LinkedIn as well and send me a message there. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our key insights from the salary guide today. However, I would strongly recommend looking at some of our other thought leadership pieces, such as our Global Skills Index, our Hayes Journal 20th edition, Uncovering the DNA of a Future Workplace in Asia report, and Japan's Top 10 Talent Trends for 2021. If you grab your phone now and just take a picture of the QR code below these graphics, you'll be able to get direct access to the download page to get access to these reports. As I mentioned before, there is another white paper that we do each year, one that we recently did at the back end of last year, which is around diversity and inclusion in Asia. Very good report, with a lot of input from various people around the region. If you'd like access to that report, I can certainly provide you with that if you reach out to me, but you can also go onto our Hayes Japan website, and there is a resources tab there which will show you links to all of the white papers and resources and publications that we produce. So thank you very much. So I just zoomed in there. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today. It is greatly appreciated if you can participate in our survey that will pop up when this webinar is finished. All participants will be emailed the salary guide report, and you'll also receive a recording of today's webinar. If you have any further questions, please reach out to your consultant or to the email shown on this page, or as I said earlier, through to me directly on my email or through my LinkedIn. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your attendance. Have a good rest of the week. Hope to see you soon. Arigatou gozaimashita.